President Trump is continuing his assault on government oversight. He's fired 5 inspectors general in recent weeks, getting rid of the watchdogs who had been investigating everything from Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's spending habits to arms sales to Saudi Arabia to the spending of trillions of dollars of stimulus money. My next guest says the administration is trying to turn watchdogs into lapdogs. Gordon Heddell is a former inspector general at both the Labor and Defense Departments and worked under both Democratic and Republican presidents. We spoke yesterday. Gordon, a lot of people look at these IG firings and think maybe they're on par with the firing of James Comey, people who are investigating the president or another key person who doesn't want to be investigated. May also be a bit of impeachment retaliation since an IG report began the process that led to the president's impeachment. I'm wondering what you make of those comparisons, and to your mind, is Trump trying to just do away with the people who might make him look bad, or is there something more sinister at play?
Well, those questions are all tied in together, Andrew, and they're good questions. First of all, on Comey, certainly Comey, as the FBI director, held a very, very senior and important post in government. But the reality is that the impact of these firings of IGs is identical to the firing of Comey. It's just different timing, different issues that led to that. And some of this is in retaliation, particularly the firing of Michael Atkinson, the inspector general at the intelligence community. Clearly, in fact, the president has almost admitted to that in so many words. Now, the other firings, the firing of the acting inspector general at Health and Human Services, she simply issued a report that indicated that our healthcare providers did not have sufficient resources and equipment in the area of, to protect them. And with respect to the State Department IG who was fired, Steve Lennick, he was fired because it was apparent to the Secretary of State who told the president that he was being investigated, and that was inconvenient to them. And with respect to the Defense Department Inspector General, which is particularly egregious, the president said when the coronavirus act was passed a month and a half or so ago, the president said he would not comply with the requirement in that act to have a special inspector general who would follow the money. And consequently, when the Council of Inspectors General, who had the authority to do so, appointed the acting IG at Defense, Glenn Fine, the president almost immediately removed him.
Gordon, if the administration gets its way, no one will have oversight over its actions. No, not inspectors general, not Congress, which has been foiled in its oversight. The administration claims that the court can't investigate the president during his presidency. As a former IG, how dangerous is it to allow any president, much less Donald Trump, to operate free of any oversight?
Andrew, this is dangerous, believe me. Don't think otherwise. This country is in trouble right now. A lot of people don't realize it. I mean, obviously, we have some serious crisis. We've got the coronavirus. We've got unrest with respect to what's been happening in Minneapolis and around the country. We've got a president who does not understand much of what he really should be understanding, whether it's about the military or about any of his department agencies. He just appears not to have educated himself in the way that he should have when he came into presidency. Now, in terms of the president's powers, you are correct. What we have learned through this exercise in unbelievable futility at times is that this president can do just what he wants to do. The law says that if a president wants to remove an inspector general, he or she must give notice to the Congress, and they must explain to the Congress their reasons for doing so. Now, this president, unfortunately, because the law is a bit vague in my opinion, he simply said, I've lost confidence. Our country's in serious trouble right now.
Gordon, earlier you mentioned State Department IG Steve Lennick. He testified before Congress this week. I'll get into the details of his testimony in a moment, but one of the things he told Congress is that Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, and the guy in charge of his department knew that he was investigating Pompeo before he was fired. As a former IG, how chilling is that? If you were still an IG, would you be more reticent to launch an investigation of a superior in that kind of environment?
That's a great question, Andrew. I would not be more reticent, and I would say that most IGs would not be more reticent, but the president has a lot of leverage. The president really, under the current law, has the last word, and that's what we're faced with here today. Now, I mean, Steve Lennick, I know him, and I know that Steve would stand up. He's got the backbone to do what is needed here. But I'm sure that Secretary Pompeo knew what the IG was doing, and if Secretary Pompeo doubted it, he easily could have asked the Inspector General. I mean, I had good relationships with the cabinet secretaries I worked with. When they had a concern, when they thought that maybe there was something that was going to cause them embarrassment, or where they had to answer, they simply picked up the phone and asked me to come up and tell them about it, and I did. I laid it right on the table. They understood the importance of what the Inspector General does. If they use an Inspector General's office properly, it enables them to run a better office, to get less criticism, and those things that do become problems, it enables them to get right on top of them and get ahead of the game.
Finally, Gordon, since hoping that Congress will step up and say stop this to the president, and it doesn't seem to be happening, how do we fix this? The IG is enshrined in the law, but nobody seems positioned to enforce those laws, and you need everybody to cooperate, and they're not cooperating. Do we need to change the IG law? Do we need to make it so that only Congress can fire an Inspector General? What other changes would you recommend?
Andrew, the law needs to be amended, and it needs to be clarified. Exactly what does a president need to say when he or she fires an Inspector General? It cannot be vague, it cannot be general, and it cannot be I've lost confidence. So that's the first thing with respect to Inspectors General. The second thing is presidents need to be required to fill Inspector General vacancies. Andrew, there have been IG vacancies that have existed for not just months, but for years. Presidents don't want to be criticized. But it goes with the territory if you're a president. To be a servant of the people, a good government official, you accept that there's going to be criticism, that our checks and balances are critical to the democracy that we live in, and that we, the American people, deserve a president who will be the president for everyone in the country.
Gordon Heddell is a former Inspector General in both the Labor and Defense Department, serving under Presidents Bush and Obama. Mr. Heddell, appreciate a few minutes. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Andrew.
And up next on RFL, an artist who's found a moving way to remember the victims of COVID-19.